So I'm just going to share one last slide, and then I'm going to take questions from the audience. So I like to think about mobile as a journey, and it really is a journey. The technology is changing so rapidly. Who would have thought that Nokia and BlackBerry wouldn't be at the top of the mountain at this point? But the world's changing, and the companies that were the leaders are not necessarily at the top, and things are changing so dynamically and so quickly. So we are seeing new players come into the market, advances. And so I think there's three things that I think are important to think about. First off, I think you want to think about the what. What are your business priorities? Spend a little time and think about what business processes do I want to focus on, which employees, which consumer groups, which stakeholders, and how can I transform the business for them, combining business process improvement as well as technology, bringing those components together. A lot of us jump to the how really fast. We're like, oh, I need this MDM, I need this, need to do this for provisioning, I need to think through this. But first, it does make sense to really think about those use cases. The other thing I think it's important is to think about your operating model. Make sure you have governance in place, make sure you have sponsorship. You're going to want to have standards and policies in place to protect your IP, to protect your company. And I think thinking through your sourcing and your governance, that whole operating model is important too. So look at it holistically. Recognize you're not going to get there in 5 minutes. Take some small steps, experiment along the way. Maybe take some time out to develop those user stories and business cases as well. But bringing it together, I think, in a holistic fashion, and it'll evolve over time. So we have about 5 minutes left, and our panelists would love to take questions from the audience. So we got somebody right here.
I just had a general thought. Looking at this, you have a feeling you have seen this movie before. When you look at evolution of technology, most of you have been PC. We went through the same thing, ROI, best practice, blah, blah, blah. Internet, as a matter of fact, I used to work for a company, $1.5 billion IT budget. We went around and asked people, does somebody need access to internet? Went through this. Have you learned anything at all? It's like a new kid with a toy, kid with a new toy, we go through the whole cycle again. Have you learned anything at all as a practice and methodologies to make sure of that instead of reinventing the whole wheel? Is anybody thinking about that?
I agree with you. So many of these technology trends, we've been through before in terms of, whether it's client-server technologies and then consolidation and then, ASPs and now cloud and things like that. So I think we've seen it all before, but I guess with the technology always changing, with the components of that always being different. In some ways, it's keeping most, if not all, of us employed. That's a good thing. So there's a lot. There's always something to be learned from it. But I guess the takeaways and all those, I think we're enabling the business better. So I was riding the train on the way in here this morning and stuff like that. I'm looking on the train, and everyone's head down is like on their device, and say 50% of the people are working, and say 50% of people are doing consumer stuff. Well, 10 years ago, everyone was reading the paper and no one was working. So I think that's just a quick example there to where the business value of the same cycles is increasing.
What exactly does it mean for the terms of the productivity, value added, lessons learned?
I think we're just continuing to see increased productivity for each wave of technology. The cost of computing continues to fall. The cost per device continues to fall. Storage prices continue to fall. So in a way, we're just getting more and more productive. I think this time around, I see so much more of a democratization of technology. It's in the hands of everyone. That the power has gone to the people, so to speak.
Consumer-driven.
And I think that in the past, even when we moved to desktop computing, there was still more control. So I think that now, it is a bit different. It is a different wave. There's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences, I think, that are unique to mobile this time around.
The other thing is, no matter what, all of us need to be prepared to deliver we have to think of it more in terms of services than here's this device and I want to get my information on this device. We have all of these different services that the people that we work for need, And whatever device or whatever platform comes out in the future, we need to be able to deliver that regardless of what technology it is. So,
I agree.
First, thank you for sharing the intimate stories. It's been very helpful. A question for each of the three panelists is about adoption. If you would, give a key for adoption. You have different size organizations. What has been the key to increase adoption for people to actually use and utilize the mobility strategies that you've implemented?
First of all, in terms of measuring adoption, I'll be completely transparent and say that's a challenge because, again, as a component of a mobile strategy, you want to be able to have the analytics and the metrics and all of that stuff. And I'll tell you that's a weak spot right now for us. I mean, we've put these applications out there without necessarily the means of actually tracking the usage. There's certain things we're doing, with a minimal amount of analytics. But a lot of this is peer pressure within the financial consulting community. We are rated on Dalbar and Net Promoter and other scores, and some of that is experience and perception. And so we're organized in regions, and these groups will meet regularly, and some people that have adopted the mobile technology and are having higher customer satisfaction scores, it puts pressure on the folks who are not adopting it because it's a stark contrast between the folks that are using the legacy technology and those that are embracing the new ones.
Well, I would say, it's interesting. I don't know if you've looked at, iOS apps in the App Store or whatever, but a lot of them are zombie apps. They never get used or they barely get used. And I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing out there is people don't spend enough time on the consumer experience. Bringing a user-centered design approach to building an app, is really important because the first time somebody goes onto that app, if it stinks, they'll never use it again. And so you have that one shot at it, right? And so I would say take the time to really spend time with your end customers, understanding their needs, understand their workflow, understand how you're going to make it better for them. Don't just push some crap onto them that's not going to work. And then, of course, it won't work because they won't like it. It's not going to work with how they do their work. So I think that, training, really focusing on user experience are very, very important.
Don't do waterfall development with mobile. You have to do agile. You need an iterative approach. You need to do all of those key tenets of agile methodology, including storyboards, to really understand what your users expect. Another key tenet is stakeholder involvement from the business. You can't do this without their involvement. And then iterate. You're not going to get it right the first time. There'll be things that people totally missed in the stories. There'll be new, if you truly are transforming the business will come up with new ideas and taking it to the next level. So you've got to constantly cycle and iterate.
yeah, and the ideas can't come solely from IT because we don't know what they do as well as they know what they do.
Well, I think we'll take one more question and then we're going to wrap up because we're out of time. But I think we have one more person here.
Right. First, a sort of a general comment in terms of the evolution of the platforms. How many of you are still carrying your Walkman?
Sony Walkman? Seriously?
Do any of you know what a Walkman is?
I do.
Is this one?
Close to it. But case in point, my kids used to have Walkman. Now they don't even know what they are. That was just a general comment. So 50 years from now, who knows? Maybe people will be looking back at this era and say, you mean they carried those devices? They didn't have subcutaneous devices or integrated circuits or cochlear implants, whatever. I mean, that's just science fiction. But relevant to this discussion, ROI. I know a lot of managers are reluctant to do BYOD, because of a fear of lack or loss of ROI, because they fear that the employees will be using it for their own rather than corporate types of endeavors. So is there a way that you sort of monitor that the BYOD is used for corporate as opposed to private, or it just doesn't matter? You just accept that there'll be some loss of time? And how does that factor into your ROI, if at all?
I mean, to me, it was always a reverse use case. The employees were using the corporate-owned devices for personal stuff. We had no blocks on that. They could call home 15 times a day. they could go out and check scores on ESPN.com all they want and everything. We didn't stop that at all. And then as we kind of move the device to BYOD, we're only paying half the cost now, and people are going to be using it the same, and they might be using it more for the personal stuff, which is okay, fine, but the corporate usage stayed about the same, and if not went up, and it didn't go up because we did BYOD. It's just the evolution of doing more on the mobile device, but there's a little bit of a reverse use case on our side.
And there's also a way to use telecom expense management where, I mean, at our firm, they ask us, to come up with an estimate of what we think we'll be spending per month and allocating that for our personal use. So it really just depends. I mean, some organizations track it in a more elaborate fashion. Some use an honor system. But I think there's ways at the end. I mean, you do need to look at the total cost of ownership. You don't want to just look at the device cost. There's support costs and things like that. So you may want to limit the number of devices and operating systems that you're going to support when you go BYOD. So there's lots of things to take into consideration.
And I would turn it around and ask, what capabilities are you putting on that mobile device to even make it, something that they want to use for business? If you're not giving them applications and business apps, what do you expect them to do? How do you expect that balance to be anything other than personal use on it?
So, well, listen, I want to say thank you to everyone for coming today. We really appreciate it. Thanks for leaning in and asking questions. And I hope you have a great mobile journey ahead of you. I think it will be exciting. And I want to thank all our panelists for sharing their stories today. So thank you very, very much.